Good evening, brothers and friends. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening for another virtual education series. This is our 22nd education in the series entitled 21st Century Conversations on Freemasonry. And this is the 41st virtual education since Rubicon started producing these in 2020. For Masons to fully comprehend the magnificence and the utility of Freemasonry, we must always remember to remain a student of the craft and to represent its tenets with honor and with respect. May tonight be another lesson that will allow us to continue to better understand ourselves and to achieve further light in Masonry. For those of you who are returning visitors to this education, we thank you for coming back. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we welcome you and thank you for being with us tonight. First, I would like to express my thanks and gratitude to the Masonic sponsors and brothers who helped to make this possible. I would like to, of course, thank everyone who is a member of the Rubicon Masonic Society. I would like to especially thank the Ware Lodge of Research, chartered in 1965, and joining us this evening is Worship Brother Dan Kimball and Worship Brother Tom Nitsky from Ware Lodge of Research. And of course, I want to thank Lexington Lodge No. 1, chartered in 1788. It's the oldest Masonic lodge in Kentucky. And our Vice Chair, Worship Brother John Bizak, is a past master of Lexington Lodge No. 1. My name is Brian Evans. I'm past master of Lexington Lodge No. 1 and chairman of Rubicon. It's an honor to be with you, so let us proceed and begin. Worship Brother Tom Nitsky, would you do the honors of delivering the opening devotion?
Brethren, if you'll join me, Grand Architect of the Universe, remind us as we begin our meeting today of the purpose of Freemasonry. Shows that as fellow craft degree teaches us the importance of learning, knowledge, and education, that we must be about the business of spreading Masonic knowledge that our fraternity, being better informed, may better reflect the best that is in Freemasonry. Guide us in this endeavor as we conduct all our business this day. We ask in your name's sake. Amen.
So mote be. Thank you, brother. Brothers and friends, as you know, the purpose of this virtual Masonic education is to assist in the improvement of oneself by establishing a deeper understanding of Freemasonry, of its traditions and practices, and further cementing our amazing brotherhood for the betterment of mankind. Any opinions expressed during this virtual education will be those of the presenter or participant, do not necessarily reflect the views of any lodge or Grand Lodge or the Rubicon Masonic Society. By participating with us, you do consent to our guidelines, which can be found at rubiconmasonicsociety.com/disclaimer. Just some simple protocol. Everyone should know that these are not tiled meetings. Masons and non-Masons are more than welcome to attend and participate. So please be mindful that anything said this evening should be suitable for Masons of all degrees as well as non-Masons. Gentlemanly manners are to be expected at all times. We ask no alcohol, no eating, no smoking, no foul language, no discussion of politics or religion. Attendees may be removed if not following these protocols. Some quick recommendations to best assure that this virtual meeting is as enjoyable for all attendees as possible. We respectfully recommend and request the following. Recommended attire for each of our meetings is coat and tie. Please type your name and any appropriate Masonic title or location under your video to identify yourself to others. If you're not a Mason, please simply type guest after your name. Please enable your video camera so other attendees can see you. Please reduce background noise, turn off all other computer programs, and as always, please be patient should any technical difficulties occur. Tonight's guest presenter is Brother Antonio Mantica from Lexington Lodge No. 1. Worship Brother Bizak, will you please do the honors of introducing our special guest?
I will. Thank you, brother. Antonio is raised at Lexington Lodge No. 1 in July of 2022. He's currently in the Master Mason Instructional Degree class, and he's scheduled with his class to return his proficiency in the degree in late December. His presentation is titled A View from the Starting Line, and it was published in the Journal of the Masonic Society's Fall 2022 issue. Tonight, he's going to expand upon an essay of the same name as the original essay that was written shortly after he became an entered apprentice. But now that he's a Master Mason, Brother Mantica hopes to further explore and expand some of those observations. His presentation tonight will include engaging questions, such as to whom does Freemasonry appeal today? What does it look like to be a young man and a young Mason in 2022? Where are all the Millennial Masons? And why do some even try to run a marathon in less than 2 hours? Antonio, the floor is yours, brother.
Thank you very much. I will start sharing. I have a couple of slides to go along with my talk today. All right, so yes, indeed. Good evening, brothers, guests, and hello to all those who are watching or watching or listening to this later on. And thank you very much for being here. My name is Antonio Mantica, and as Worshipful Brother Bizak said, I was raised to the degree of a Master Mason in Lexington Lodge No. 1 in Lexington, Kentucky, this past July, just 3 months ago. And today I'd like to talk to you all about my experience as both a young man and a young Mason. And as was mentioned, this talk was inspired by a brief essay that I had written shortly after becoming an entered apprentice. I want to put down a few words outlining why I had first knocked on the door of the lodge in the first place, and why I decided to proceed, and what I saw in the past, present, and future of Freemasonry at the time. And through what I will call generous encouragement on behalf of Worshipful Brother Bizak, I submitted this essay to the Journal of the Masonic Society, and it was accepted and has indeed been published in their most recent fall edition. But that essay was written in June of 2021, almost a year and a half, or just under a year and a half ago. But now that I've been finally raised to the degree of a Master Mason, I thought it would be worth it to take the time to reevaluate that essay and expand upon it after becoming a Master Mason. Now, those of you who have read the article may hear some of those passages again here tonight, but I hope to provide you with enough new material so as to not be simply regurgitating it. So I will give a hearty thank you to the Brothers of the Rubicon Masonic Society and to the co-sponsors of Ware Lodge of Research and Lexington Lodge No. 1 for offering up this education series as a forum to present this new and improved version of a view from the starting line. And thank you so much to all of you for attending or listening to it. So to get things started, I will, if you don't already know him, introduce you to Kenyan marathon runner and world record holder, Eliud Kipchoge. Now, when I first wrote this essay, Kipchoge had recently done something that scientists had said was impossible in the past. He ran a marathon in less than 2 hours. This will go down in history as far as the human family is concerned, he said in his announcement. It's not about recognition or ratification, but to make history and to pass on the message that no human is limited, is what he said. But just in fact, last month, on September 25th of 2022, Kipchoge set the marathon world record once again. There's no stopping him. And amazingly, 4 out of the top 5 of the fastest marathon times in human history were all Kipchoge. Now, in spite of Kipchoge's very inspiring words, let me quickly interject here before we get too much further with the marathon metaphor, with the major caveat that I have never run a marathon, nor do I ever intend to. And in fact, I am more than happy to point out that Philippides, the Greek messenger who ran the some 25 miles from Marathon to Athens in order to warn the citizens of approaching Persian attackers, died after completing the distance. Now, throughout this talk, I may make mention or references of my friends who run marathons, but please understand that that is much less about me bragging about how many people I know who run marathons, and more about needing an excuse to include things I've read about Kipchoge online into this talk. So let me then say, my friends who run marathons like to talk about their Kipchoge number. Now, your Kipchoge number is the distance that you could run while maintaining Kipchoge's record-setting pace, about 13 miles an hour. I'm pretty sure standard treadmills don't even go that high. If your treadmill goes from 1, most of them, I think, go to 10 miles per hour. In fact, I think my own Kipchoge number is probably something like 2 feet. But if even. But despite all of these things, as I said, I find something very inspiring about the story of Eliud Kipchoge. And I can't help but think about him when I think about standing at the starting line of my own, thankfully metaphorical, marathon as a brand new Master Mason. Now, I will not claim to know what was going through Kipchoge's mind as he stood at the starting line of his miraculous marathon. But I would take this opportunity here to reflect on my own thoughts beginning a Masonic marathon. And perhaps the most interesting question to start that reflection is simply saying, why Freemasonry? Because when I look around at other applicants, I don't really feel like a typical candidate for Freemasonry. Now, in keeping with the running metaphor, you could say that I saw 3 hurdles which stood out in particular. The first is genealogical. The very night that I sat down to write my thoughts after becoming an entered apprentice, I had met 5 petitioners at Lodge that night, all of whom told me that they had sought out Freemasonry because they had fathers or grandfathers who had been Masons. Now, to my knowledge, I have no relatives or ancestors whatsoever who were Masons. So why should I seek out Freemasonry? The second hurdle is generational. When I look around at other lodge members, I see a high percentage of men who are above 65 years old. And I speak to you here today as a man of 29. So why should I seek out Freemasonry? And the third hurdle is from past experiences. The fraternal elements of Freemasonry are a significant draw for many men who were in the military or who were in law enforcement, or even those who may have been in university social fraternities who were wishing to keep those feelings of brotherhood that they had in those places. And yet, I'm not a part of any of those groups. So again, why seek out Freemasonry? Well, upon completing the Miracle Marathon, Kipchoge told a reporter, "For humanity, whatever level you are in, you can always move yourself to another level." And I believe that sentiment full-heartedly. And I knew it deep down in my heart before I'd ever even sought out Freemasonry. I knew that there was no end-all, be-all, apex of goodness that any one person can achieve. But I did have deep inside a desire to learn how to improve myself, to find some means of self-improvement by tempering the indulgences in my life that I took to excess, by finding courage and acceptance in the face of adversities in life, or by becoming a more empathetic and understanding person to all. And I tell you today that that is why I sought out Freemasonry. I was looking for a morality system built on wisdom traditions that would inspire me, encourage me, and support me on a journey of self-betterment. And before I knew anything about it, really, I wondered if Freemasonry was exactly that. And of course, now, not everyone will seek out Freemasonry for the exact same reasons as I did. And that's a very good thing, I promise you. I like to make the joke that if the whole world thought like me, it might not be a better world, but it would be a more efficient one. But I told that joke to my wife just a couple hours ago, and she said, that's not funny. It would be a much worse world if everyone thought like you. But seriously, if Freemasonry can attract men whose fathers were Masons, men who are retired, men who were in other fraternal organizations, and men like me, and men who aren't any of those categories, then I suppose the next question to ask is, then whom does Freemasonry appeal to? I'm pretty sure that since the founding of Freemasonry, people have been saying things like, there has never been a greater need for Freemasonry than today. But I am serious when I tell you that I think there has never been a greater need for Freemasonry today, particularly in a post-2016 America, a time when the division between people feels immeasurable. I mean, prior to ever coming to Freemasonry, I had days where even seeing a certain bumper sticker on someone's car would ruin my whole drive home. But Freemasonry, in fact, offers an opportunity to teach you, as it taught me, how to live beyond that. In fact, this is what I think is one of Freemasonry's most important triumphs. It taught me that we are all in the same boat, all on the same level. And that is something bigger than our political differences, bigger than our religious differences. And I love that I now have brothers who are different than I am in all of these respects. I cherish the love that I hold for them and the love that I am felt in return. And I claim that anyone who wants that peace is precisely whom Freemasonry appeals to today. Now, let me tell you that I am incredibly grateful that I started attending the lodge get to know you dinners at the specific lodge that I did. Because after attending some meetings in other lodges in the surrounding area of the state, I'm confident to say that I may have been turned away from Freemasonry had I walked through the door at another lodge. Now, please, please, please understand that I do not want to belittle anyone else's practice of Freemasonry. Some do come to Freemasonry looking for an excuse to get out of the house for a night and to hang out with the buddies. And there is a space within Freemasonry where that exists, and that works for those who want it. It is, in fact, the appeal for some people. But for me, I claim this is not the universal appeal, as I said before. And honestly, before ever knocking on the door of the lodge, I was a little afraid that this was all Freemasonry was. I've probably shared this anecdote one too many times with the brothers at my own lodge, so I hope that they will forgive me for sharing it again. But one of my personal science heroes is the American physicist Richard Feynman, most well known to the public for his role on the commission that investigated the Challenger disaster. He wrote in his autobiography about being turned off by Freemasonry. He said that all he saw was a club of men who sat around patting themselves on the back and saying things like, "Our club is so great, isn't it great? Everyone should want to be a part of our club." In fact, this may have been one of my biggest concerns before ever even stepping foot into a lodge. Surely any group of 2 or more people is susceptible to such a mentality, and I'm sure that Freemasonry is no exception to that. So was I seeking out a group of people who liked to sit around on leather couches and blow smoke? But today, I'm thankful to tell you that the lodge that I did step into was far from such a group, and the brothers therein far from such a person. I found a group of distinguished men, respectful men, a group of people who listened, comprehended, and met me on the level, a group of leaders. And in that group, I saw the opportunity to surround myself with people who would encourage me and cultivate the same virtues within myself. Going back to Kipchoge, when Kipchoge ran his miracle marathon, he did so with a team to help him achieve the under 2-hour goal. The team consisted of 41 pace sitters, lovingly called rabbits by my friends who run marathons. The rabbits rotated in and out of a V formation in front of him, breaking the wind. These 41 rabbits were a dream team roster of long-distance runners, consisting of running champions from all over the world, the best of the best. If you look up the list of rabbits online, you will see Olympic gold medalists, world champions, and world record holders, one after another. And I tell you that as soon as I met the brothers of the lodge that I ended up petitioning to join, I knew that I had found my 41 rabbits. Now, the finish line of my Masonic journey, if it could be said to exist at all, certainly lies far ahead. Well, hopefully lies far ahead. But having been a Master Mason for only 3 months now, and coming to a place where I am confident about my decision to have started that journey in the first place, the next question becomes, what do I now see on the path ahead? And then, having considered what Freemasonry has to offer me, what can I, in turn, offer Freemasonry? I'll answer the first question by saying that since becoming an entered apprentice Mason, I've become painfully aware of some of the shortcomings that Freemasonry is experiencing today. Now, please understand that I am not going to use this opportunity as a forum to be critical and tear down Freemasonry, but rather explain difficulties that I see facing the organization in 2022 as a young man and young Master Mason. In particular, I'm painfully aware that over 200 years ago, Worshipful Brother Prince Hall was rejected by his own brothers and forced to form a racially segregated jurisdiction of Freemasonry, a jurisdiction which still goes officially unrecognized in 4 US states. And it was 6 states when I became an entered apprentice. I'm painfully aware that there are 2 states in which being a gay man can constitutionally prevent you from becoming a Freemason. I'm aware that there are lodges that correlate success with the number of names on their rosters, and I'm aware that expanding definitions of gender identity that are occurring during my own lifetime pose concerns among a group that only accepts men. Now, while I recognize and appreciate that all of these discussions are things that are larger than me and bigger than me, these are nevertheless conversations that as a Mason, I am now a part of. And I cannot refuse to point out the paradox in a group of people who claim the sanctity of brotherhood and belief in a great leveler who holds us all on the same level, who at the same time might hold them others below themselves just because of the color of their skin or because of the people they share their beds with. Now, in the announcement for this talk, you were promised an answer to the question, where are the Millennial Freemasons? Now, perhaps this was put forward with a hefty amount of lightheartedness, and also perhaps this is a good opportunity to try to actually answer that question for you. You might say, well, my lodge has plenty of Millennial Freemasons, so what do you mean, where are they? But I'll mention that a recent report from the United Grand Lodge of England claimed that only 9% of Masons were under the age of 40. I wouldn't expect it necessarily to be too different in the USA, and for reference, the 16 to 40 age group represents 34% of men in the USA. So maybe the question isn't just where are the Millennial Masons, maybe the question is where are the Millennial Masons and about a quarter of the Gen X Masons? Gen Zers are just now reaching their late teens and early 20s, so we'll give them some time to still decide. Let's go back to Kipchoge to try and find an answer. As I emphasized before, I do not want to run a marathon and I have no plans to ever do so. But I was curious. What would even inspire someone to run a marathon other than invading Persian attackers? In researching this terrible question, I came across an interview with Canadian journalist and marathon runner himself, Malcolm Gladwell. Gladwell claims that the secret lies in effort. And he highlights that opinion by saying, quote, "There's something beautiful and transformative about effort. People spend their whole lives retreating from effort. I'm always fascinated by when you're using an escalator and some people get on the escalator and they don't walk up it. Here's someone presented with an opportunity to do what they would normally do on stairs, but only get there faster if they just gave it some effort. But they say, no, I don't actually care about getting there faster. What I want to do is take this opportunity to let someone else do the work for me." Now, I feel like if your instinctive response is to stand on an escalator, says Gladwell, then you've no conception of how effort can be a beautiful thing. End quote. Now, full disclosure. Antonio says stand on the escalator if you want to stand on the escalator. But Gladwell's comments on effort reveal something important. Practicing Freemasonry takes effort. It takes time. It takes focus. And is it easier to portion that time and energy to Freemasonry if you're retired? Of course it is. But still, it takes effort. So I'm sorry if I don't have a clear-cut, definitive answer to what the question of where are all the under 40 Masons is, but I hope at least this might illustrate some of the obstacles that younger Masons are facing right now. And maybe someone wiser than I am can actually find the answer. Now, on a much brighter note, I also see in Freemasonry the opportunity to offer up my own experiences as a helping hand to my brothers. the thought of improving my own leadership skills by surrounding myself with other leaders is an appealing one. But it also means that I need to provide the same of what I'm receiving. The merits of pursuing good leadership practices have always been a pillar of my adult life. And in Freemasonry, pardon me, I see the opportunity to amplify and share my own leadership beliefs. Now, I am a longtime student of physics, and as such, when thinking about this, I cannot help but make the analogy of laser light, where light bounces back and forth off of mirrors inside of a ruby tube, giving energy to the nearby ruby atoms until they all have enough energy to emit light themselves, causing a coherent beam of red light to emit. This is how leaders, surrounding themselves with other leaders, give each other energy for the ultimate purpose of finding light. And staying within the vein of physics, it's no mystery that Freemasons regularly refer to the grand architect of the universe. And I see ahead of me on my Masonic marathon the opportunity to illuminate more about my relationship to that architect and about the role that I play on the universal stage. Perhaps in some small way, my knowledge of that universe may help one of my brothers do the same. Now, when I had first sat down to write this, it was only 6 days ago that another Kenyan long-distance runner named Titus Ekiru announced that he would set out to beat Kipchoge's dazzling 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 40-second marathon finish. Now, I'm not sure what my official timestamp will come out to for my own Masonic marathon ahead of me, but I know that I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to give it effort. I will trust the 41 rabbits who are setting the pace in front of me, and I will seek to improve myself through Masonry, while encouraging my brothers to improve themselves at the same time. And together we will emit a light so bright, so that hopefully when I have reached that finish line, wherever it may be, it will be to look behind me, see another runner at the starting line himself, saying, I'm going to be all of that and more. Thank you very much for listening.
Great job, brother. Very good job. And thank you for taking the time to prepare this education. For those of you that are not aware, and I won't get too personal in your life, but Brother Antonio is a new father with a beautiful young new family that is growing. So we appreciate you taking some time away from that. I'm sure your wife is just waiting for you to get back.
Thank you very much. I think bedtime's going smoothly. I don't hear any screaming from either side. So
that's great. So I have a couple questions, and I would encourage everyone to maybe just think about this presentation for a moment. And I'm sure there were some bits and pieces of it that really inspired you or brought a question to your mind, or maybe a comment or a story or something that you went through. And I think what will make this presentation tonight and this education is enjoyable for everyone is let's have some conversations. Let's discuss this. Let's discuss some of these questions and thoughts. So to do that, you can simply type your question in the chat bar or raise a virtual hand, and I'll call on you, and let's get some engaging discussion going, and I'll try to kick it off here for you. So what was your first impression, brother, when you came to Lexington Lodge #1 for the very first time?
yeah, as I had said, I think one of my biggest fears was it really was a men's club of self-serving and sitting around and eating fancy dinners and just saying, well, isn't our club great? This club is great. We're great. We're good men. And full stop. And yeah, I remember, walking in the first time and seeing just the decorum, seeing the way that people carried themselves. Men dressed in suits, men greeting each other respectfully. And it gave the lodge an air of there's something bigger here, and we cherish it, and it's special to us. And we'll share it with you if it's meant to be. So I think that was my first impression. It was impressive.
Good. Well, you came back a second time, and here we are. So that's great. So you mentioned marathon many times throughout your presentation, and when I think of marathon, most people probably think of it's very physical on your body, but I mean, there's a mental part of it as well, right? To overcome the physical. So how would you maybe relate a combination of mental and physical challenges with Freemasonry that maybe the marathon has to go through as well?
Absolutely. So something fascinating about Kipchoge's marathon run is if you look at a graph of speed versus time of the marathon, there's something inherent that typically for people, it looks like a U. You start out fast, you sort of reach a plateau, and then at the end, there's something inherent in the brain that just says, I'm at the last mile, the last part, and you get this final boost of speed that just pushes you forward to go through it. And that seems to be the case for most people who run marathons. But if you look at Kipchoge's speed during his miracle marathon, it doesn't look like that. He maintains a much more steady pace from start to finish and is able to, I guess, curtail or cull that mental impulse of, I'm at the end, I've got to give it everything and push myself harder at this point than at the rest of it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if, my recommendation is not necessarily like mentally strain yourself toward the end of life, but rather to say that finding the balance of the physical effort you put into a marathon is clearly one of the most important things. Giving too much effort on one end, too much effort on the other end, and you're exhausted by the end of it. And the marathon guy says, you've got to find that groove, find what works for you. And I would say for the mental marathon, for the mental Masonic marathon, the same metaphor carries. Too much an overzealous entered apprentice might dive in too deep. You might be overwhelmed with memory work. I can't quite think of a great metaphor off the top of my head, but mm-hmm. I hope my meaning is clear in that there is an appropriate balance of mental effort to find, mm-hmm. Which will lead you to the best results for a Masonic marathon.
Yeah, I think it's a great analogy, and maybe a perfect analogy actually, because marathon is so long. It takes so much preparation and practice and mental strength. And I think what you're maybe suggesting is, as the runner, you have to find your stride. Find your stride,
yeah,
and stick with it. So it's probably very similar to Freemasonry. And when I think about a marathon, I'm sure there's a certain percentage of people that drop out because they just can't complete the marathon. And similar to Freemasonry, there's a large percentage of men that drop out because they can't complete the marathon. So,
sure.
I guess probably the runners that continue and don't drop out, they've maybe just had a little bit more preparation. Maybe they had more support. Maybe they're just more fit mentally or physically. So I think if you look at those things and try to attribute it to Masonry in general, there's probably an infinite number of analogies we could take with that. So I probably would suggest for anyone that's in Freemasonry or interested in Freemasonry, they got to find their stride too, and you need to find your coaches or mentors too. You need to find, like you said, your rabbits. That's a great example. So I think it's a fantastic analogy, and we have a couple questions already. So where's Brother Tom? Go ahead, sir.
Worship Brother Antonio, great presentation. The question I have is, I know Lexington Lodge has a structured educational program. What are your thoughts on how that helped you and them taking the time between degrees? If you would kind of expound on that.
Yeah, so it's taken me a long time to go from applicant to Master Mason. Part of that was due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which slowed things down. But part of that was that at Lexington Lodge No. 1, I won't speak for the lodge, but I get the sense that there is a feeling of this work is important to us. And so we're going to take the time for you to ingest and digest the work. And and like I mentioned too, with that there are lodges that operate different ways, and there are men who come to Freemasonry who anticipate going through all 3 degrees in 3 months or in a much shorter time period. And there are spheres where that exists, and that's an appeal for people, and that works for people. But from my perspective in my Masonic journey, as I said, I was looking to get a much deeper understanding of the traditions, much deeper understanding of how I can apply the principles of Freemasonry toward self-improvement. And I think I only know the Lexington Lodge experience, but giving it the solemnity, giving it that time, really instilled those feelings in me. And then in terms of, so was that the second part of your question? The first part of your question was the structured degree program, and the second part was just time. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Just the time that it took, and instead of rushing through things, you feel like with taking the time and absorbing the information, absorbing and creating brotherhood, do you feel that that was more beneficial?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel my class, we go through as classes in groups. I've developed such a bond with those brothers that I've gone through the structured class program with them. I guess if I can keep it within the running metaphor, exactly as Worshipful Brother Evans just said, it's almost like practicing or conditioning or training prior to doing the marathon. And without a program like that, might be like putting on a nice pair of Nikes and having at it. And I don't mean to disparage, but I think maybe my meaning is grasped here.
So maybe to provide some more clarity there. So at Lexington Lodge, we have a structured degree program where each class, we try to group brothers in groups in classes so they can go through the learning process of each degree together. Those classes on average anywhere between 3 and 6 people on average. Anything more than 5, it tends to get more difficult because you're dealing with everyone's schedules, which is obviously challenging. And I would say you're looking at probably 6 months per degree, as long as there's not a pandemic that gets in the way to increase that. Is that about the time frame that you went through? If we were to take out the pandemic, would you say?
Yeah, in my experience, it was about a year, and then 6 months. 6 months. Okay. So were you informed ahead of time about the length of time it would take to go through those degrees? Just curious. Well, after things got settled with COVID, yes, but during the COVID times, there was so much uncertainty. But I mean, now that things are, especially, I think the structured degree program that has sort of been revised a little. I mean, please speak more to this. But I think with this slightly revised degree work program, applicants are it's made much more explicit to applicants about time periods of what they should expect.
Yeah, it's for those that have an interest, it's a very fluid program that's always being improved upon after each class and within each class. In fact, Brother Jerry, I'd love to get your take on that, because you've been since day one the curator of our degree education booklets, and I think we're on maybe version 7 at the moment, perhaps. And where's Brother Bizak, you being the chair of the education committee and spearheading a tremendous amount of that education and accountability. So Jerry, what would you say about that? And I think this is an interesting conversation because, one, for those men that may be watching this or watch it later, they're curious to know what their expectations are. And I think what is going to be delivered will be different for each lodge. And this is how Lexington does it. And I think it's important to share a little bit about what's working for us and why we do it the way we do it. So Jerry, would you piggyback on that a little bit about your experience through that?
Well, sure. We have restructured the degree program. It follows more sort of a syllabus format. And I think as a lodge, we're doing a better job telling potential candidates, how long it's going to take to go through the degrees. I think EA is approximately 30 classes. So you can say it's about 30 weeks. Fellowcraft, I think 24, and Master Mason about the same. So Antonio's experience is probably going to track pretty well, about 1.5 years from 0 to Master Mason.
And those, so how frequently do we gather, would you say?
The classes usually meet
Weekly. Yeah.
Yeah. So once a brother's initiated, they meet after the initiation, enter apprentice degree, and select a date and day and time to meet as a class. It's usually an evening during the week. Class meets for approximately 2 hours. There's some lecture and discussion part of the class, and then there's a proficiency memorization portion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's 2 hours a week for however many classes, 30 for EA or 24 for Fellowcraft and so on.
Right. Where's Brother Bizak? Do you want to chime in on any of that?
Sure. The last time we had a class go through the 3 degrees in less than a year was in 2012. And since then, it's continued to increase. And as Jerry said, minimum time for all 3 degrees is 24 weeks, but that doesn't mean it can't go over, because we do have holidays and vacations and illness and family issues, and sometimes they will go over, but generally 24 weeks. But I think what Antonio said is very important about why we do this. And we do it because it works for our lodge. And I believe, Antonio, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said that we do these because our lodge believes they're important for new candidates. And that is what the majority of our members believe. And that's why it continues to progress. And we edit and improve on those degree booklets every few years. There's a whole new edition. Jerry had a lot to do with putting these last ones together, and I believe we still have work to do on them. I know you feel like that too, Jerry, but they continue to improve each time. But I've got a question for you, Antonio.
Sounds good.
What do you think? What do you believe is the most important qualification for a young Mason today?
Golly, well, in this talk, I mentioned about what in the conversation of who I think Freemasonry appeals to today. I said people who were seeking the same peace that I was seeking, the peace that came from brotherhood, the peace that came from morality and friendship, that transcended the hatred and the fear that I was otherwise experiencing in the outside world. And so if I were to stick with exactly what I talked about during this presentation, I would say the most important quality would be someone who is looking for that, looking for those qualities, looking to find those qualities within themselves, looking to find other people who have those qualities so that they can surround themselves with those people, and so that the virtue exchange can rebound around the room. And that's what I think makes good leaders better. That's what I think makes good people better.
Thank you, Antonio. We haven't told you this yet, but you're such a pleasure to have in classes. We're going to continue these for another 24 weeks.
I see. All right.
Signing off.
Well, good night then. Thank you.
But and I'll Thank you, Worshiper Bizak, for your comments and question. Brother Bruce sent me a direct message. I'm going to mention that as well. And I think this all comes full circle to some degree. Brother Bruce says, has this way of doing things helped with Lexington Lodge 1's retention rate over the years? And, you know, here we are saying jokingly that you have another 24 months to go through this. There are men who are turned on by the challenge, you know, mentally. This is they like the effort, and there are men that are turned off by this. There are brothers within our lodge, Bruce, to answer your question, that maybe don't necessarily agree with the program that we have in place and the length of time it takes, and there are brothers that do. I would say the brothers that do are more of the majority. And they understand why. As far as retention, Lexington 1 has the same issues with retention as any other lodge. And I think, in my opinion, retention is maybe the wrong thing to worry about or be concerned about, unless it's a cash flow issue. And if that's the case, it's a whole different topic. It really should be about the quality of the men, you know, not the quantity of the men. And if we can focus and find those men of higher quality, then it doesn't matter if it's, you know, 3, 5, 7, or 20 that are in your lodge, or 200. You know, think about what we're doing here. We've been doing this for 41 episodes over 2 years, and we have a good group of men, and we all see familiar faces every time we get on this. Now, sometimes it's difficult to make some of these meetings, but we see a very familiar faces every time we're on these meetings. And I think that's what's inspiring and encouraging. But it takes time. And, you know, like Antonio said in the beginning, it's a marathon. And in Masonry, the marathon's never over. So you have to find your stride and find a way to enjoy it, but also find a way to not burn yourself out. I mean, it's very easy to get burned out in anything, especially in Masonry. It's hard. We all have families and lives and things that come up. So I guess my response would be, Bruce, and you're welcome to comment back if you like, is we need to really focus in Masonry on the quality of the men and worry less about the quantity of the men in our lodges. And if money is an issue, then we need to restructure and go find a place where we can still get together and have quality conversations and not worry about how many men need to be there to open the doors based on money. Did you want to have any comments to that, Bruce? Okay. Antonio, what advice would you give for Masons that are knocking on the door for the first time? Or, and then the second part of that question, men that have been in lodge for over 50 years, have you seen anything? Would you offer any advice to those men also? Because obviously you're very intelligent, you're very well spoken. We appreciate your opinions. You've been a big part of our lodge, and I think you will continue to be so unless you get some fancy high-paying job and leave. And we're trying.
I'll try not to.
Yeah, we're making sure that any job resumes you post online are immediately taken down without you knowing, because we can't let you go anywhere. But in all seriousness, what advice would you give to young men who are interested in Freemasonry, and then men that have been in Freemasonry a long time, as far as re-engaging their stride, perhaps?
Absolutely, absolutely. To the young men, two pieces of advice. The first one is, and I hear people say this all the time when people ask for advice, but is certainly to anyone who's interested in Freemasonry, visit other lodges. Visit lodges, because like I said in this presentation, I was lucky that the first lodge that I went to, I fell in love with it, and I fell in love with the people. But I have been to lodges that I'm sure of, if that was the first lodge that I'd ever seen, I would have said, this is what Freemasonry is. I don't want anything to do with it. And I mean, so I would encourage people to visit other places, find your stride. There are, as we've said, different spheres where different communities exist within Freemasonry, where people who are looking for different things can have it. And that's one of the beautiful things about Freemasonry, that dichotomy exists. But definitely, especially if you happen to visit a lodge and you go, I got a weird vibe there, try another one. It could be a completely different environment. The second piece of advice I would say to young people is trust the rabbits, trust the 41 rabbits, trust the brothers of the lodge, especially if you're beginning the process of going through initiation. trust these men, trust these brothers. They are there to help themselves, but they're there to help you, just as you are there to help yourself, and hopefully help them down the line. My advice then to older brothers, when reflecting on older generations complaining about younger generations of like the kids these days, I'm very hesitant to accept those kinds of arguments. And this might be a really weird reference to make, but what comes to my mind is a lyric from the David Bowie song Changes. If anyone knows, it's the changes. There's a lyric in that song where David Bowie says, "These children that you spit on as they try to go about their ways are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through." And so I think about that whenever I hear someone from an older generation than me say, well, kids these days have no respect or some other generality like that. And I say, well, you know, they're very aware of the problems that they're facing. The fact that they're young does not necessarily preclude them from comprehending the issues facing them. And so rather than generalize young people as, oh, all young people are XYZ, I would say try to approach it from a more empathetic perspective, because they've got problems too. There's maybe different problems.
No, that's great. I remember the first presentation I gave in our lodge was a presentation about millennials and Freemasonry. I think I'm just over that cusp a little bit as far as age bracket goes. And there was an older brother in our lodge that was pretty condescending about the presentation in general and about the topic of millennials. And there certainly is that. There's a bias. And but I think in reality is they were once in our shoes. And in my opinion, I think all the younger men are looking for is just leadership, quality, genuine leadership and guidance, you know. So, and maybe that's a way for some other men to re-engage in Freemasonry, is find those young men that are hungry and look to be a mentor to those men on some level with their lives. And I think anyone can do that. I think Freemasonry, we're men, we're all leaders on some level, looking for leadership and looking to share our knowledge, but also gain new knowledge, life knowledge. So, you know, I think we need to find our stride with what that is. So, yeah. You said secret lies in effort was a quote from someone.
From Malcolm Gladwell. He was a journalist and marathon runner himself. Yeah.
Okay. That's fascinating. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Because I think that's I think it's 100% accurate. So can you just maybe talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. So to remind everyone briefly about the metaphor that Gladwell puts forward, he says that when he sees people standing on an escalator, that he's shocked that if they just put a little bit of effort in, they would reach their destination on time. But they say, well, I don't want to put in effort and reach or faster. And they say, I don't want to put in effort and reach my destination faster. I want someone else to do all the effort for me. So I'll just stand on the escalator. And then I tried to follow up with the caveat that I think if you are going to stand on the escalator, that's fine. I'm not here to, and I don't think that Malcolm Gladwell is berating people for standing on escalators necessarily either, but rather trying to make the point of that even a little bit of effort can get you to a destination faster, even if you don't realize it. Even if you say, I'm comfortable, I'm being moved, I don't have to do anything. There is a beauty in realizing that even if a slight amount of effort would push you much faster forward. And I think that's what he really means in that metaphor. And so bringing it to Masonry, I'm certain that there are Masons who are standing on the escalator, so to speak, who are saying, I'm chugging along forward. I'm fine with the pace that I'm at. I don't need to change anything. But wherein just the slightest amount of effort, the slightest push forward would escalate them, if you'll forgive the pun, forward along their path, and all the closer toward whatever destination they were looking for.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I like to ride the escalator. So I'm not gonna lie, but it's even more fun to ride the escalator or to walk faster on the escalator, right? And then
Sure.
you've got my two boys that will turn around and run backwards on the escalator because they think they can outrun it.
Now, I don't know what that means in the context of masonry.
I don't either.
But
Yeah, it just seemed like a good visual for everyone to have at the moment. And I'm sure every single one of you has done it or thought about doing it, maybe at some point in your life. So let's not kid ourselves. Well, I think this has been a really great conversation. I'd like to give another opportunity for anyone to make any questions or comments about this presentation tonight. Questions about, his journey, questions about how Lexington does things, or comments about how your lodge does things. But it's been a really great presentation, Antonio, and I think you're an inspiration to younger Freemasons. What's next for Antonio in the Masonic world?
it's a great question. Well, as Worshipful Brother Bizag mentioned in the introduction, I'll be returning my Master Mason proficiency on the first meeting of December, knock on wood, which I'm really looking forward to. And I know that my class of brothers who have gone through this with me, really excited about it.
It's good.
Great.
Good. So you're not going to make as many mistakes this time, right?
Yes, I'll try not to have anything written on my palm.
Obviously, I'm saying that in jest. Antonio is probably one of, if not the best speakers that I've ever seen, and give his ritual or proficiencies back, and it's a pleasure to watch.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for us, Antonio? Any questions for the men on this panel or group that might something you might be itching to ask of any kind? Just curious.
Well, maybe less, not necessarily a question, but more just I hope that some of the things that I have said, especially if I didn't really take a look around the room, but I don't know if there are many men in their 20s on tonight, or in under 30 or 30, but I hope that my perspective has at least showed you maybe a new facet that you hadn't considered before about some other men who are in Freemasonry. And if you'll be reminded of the David Bowie song, maybe in the future, you can remember that young people are going through a tough time. Sometimes it feels like, but then no tougher than just different kinds of tough.
Mm-hmm.
So I would hope that, and hopefully I didn't inspire anyone to run a marathon.
I wish one of our brothers on here, Rich Hansen, was on tonight, because he's not only a marathon runner, he is a extreme runner, meaning he'll run. Worst brother Dan, Tom, you may know, he'll run 100 miles with groups, I think, at a time. So there is a thing called extreme running, which just makes
you should you can ask him what his Kipchoge number is, and
he'll probably know what it is.
Find out. Yeah.
So brothers, if you have any final comments, now's the time.
Right. Brother Brian,
Sure. Yes.
it's Bruce. I made my screen small so I could check and look for quotes from Malcolm Gladwell. I found a very interesting one. Those three things: autonomy, complexity, and a connection between effort and reward, are most people will agree the three qualities that work has to have if it is to be satisfying.
Yeah, that's great. Any comments on that, Antonio?
Malcolm Gladwell has a laundry list of best-selling books, none of which are directly related to Freemasonry, but many of which do focus on self-improvement. And as the quote that I shared with everyone tonight, and as the quote that Brother Steinhardt just shared, he writes a bit about effort. And so I would say it's certainly worth the time putting in the effort to read some more Malcolm Gladwell if you were looking for more.
Speaking of books, any books you recommend or books that have struck you mostly throughout your journey in Freemasonry?
Masonically, I have not dived into texts written by other Masons outside of the reading from our structured degree program. You know, so I've got a list that as soon as I return my proficiency, I'm going to dive into.
Good.
For sure. But yeah.
Worst Brother Dan, any final comments from you for our presenter?
Brother Antonio, thank you for your presentation this evening, and congratulations on having your article published in the Journal of the Masonic Society. I hope that everyone had a chance to see that. I have a couple of just very basic questions for you, if you don't mind.
Of course.
First, how did you learn about Freemasonry to begin with?
You know, it's hard to pinpoint the exact first moment in my life where I heard the word. It was dubiously aware of it in high school as a men's club that a lot of the founding fathers were in. And then, you know, growing with the Dan Brown books and the National Treasure movie, growing like, oh, this you know, organization of you know, post-Templars with great sums of treasure seeking to influence politics around the world. And you know, like I said, I had read that biography of Richard, the autobiography of Richard Feynman, where he talked about being turned off by it. And so I guess I never really knew I never really knew exactly that, you know, it was quite exactly what it is. And that's, if that sentence sounds vague, it's because it intentionally was. You know, I never, prior to coming to Freemasonry, I'll say I never associated it with a group of leaders and self-improvement. And as I said, peace gained through recognition of all men being on the same level. And when I moved to Lexington, and it was probably maybe a third of, I'm looking for a social group to plug into because I'm new to the city. It was probably a third of, I am actually interested in self-improvement and improving my own leadership and personal moral philosophies. And probably a third of, well, let's go check out what these guys are really like. All of which culminated into deciding to petition at Lexington Lodge No. 1 and never looking back.
And on a going forward basis, as you have moved through the process of petitioning a lodge, having received the degrees, and now you're on the verge of returning your Master Mason proficiency, on a going forward basis, is there anything that you would do differently to mentor new Masons or somewhere in that process?
Yeah, what a good self-reflection that I should have asked myself prior to writing this presentation tonight. You know, honestly, I think the advice that I would have given to myself is advice that I took but may have not realized it at the time, and is the same advice that I said earlier, responding to Worship of Brother Evans, about what I would tell the young Masons at the beginning of their journey, which is to just trust in your brothers. They are there to help you. because you, in theory, want to be helped and want to be improved, and they are there to help you do that. So trust them in all ways. So.
Thank you for your presentation this evening. It's genuinely been a pleasure to hear your thoughts, and I appreciate you taking the time to share those with us.
Thank you for the kind words. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship Brother. Brother Mario, you have a question? Comment?
Yeah, more than a question, it's just a comment, and I was really glad to be able to make it almost in time to Brother Antonio Mantica's presentation, because it's always interesting to know what, I am also a new Master Mason, and it's always great to hear what's going on around, and I find very interesting that Lexington Lodge #1 has become, has put up this educational program, which is something very structural, and I guess it gives you a really good guide on how it's going to go, and a lot of your expectations are sort of, guided. So I just wanted to congratulate everyone, because in part, I think the best thing that, at least in my lodge, I've seen is that I have felt all the brothers almost just taking me in their arms and taking me forward. At least that's how it feels. And I'm always appreciative of, everybody doing their part and always willing to. And I think that is a very, that's what makes us passionate about it and trying to move on, because there are a lot of good people, good men who, we have almost the same kind of problems, because I once read it was in a wall, and it said, today's the first day I am this years old, and I'm improvising. And I think that happens to everybody in their lives. So to have some, feedback from the people who have done it before, and it's just great to feel that you are always in a journey where there's a lot of hands just pushing you and pulling you whenever it's necessary. And I think Brother Antonio understands that very well. So congratulations, brothers, and I wish you well in your proficiency. So please, stay there, keep going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's such a beautiful line. Anytime I make a mistake, I suppose from here on out, I'll say, I'm sorry, this is the first time I've ever been this old. Yeah, it's a good line.
Thank you, Brother Mario. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
And for those of you that didn't maybe see the chat, we have one of our brothers, Demetrius. It sounds like he's running a marathon in November. So he says this lecture is timely and on point and excellent overall. So so Demetrius, you have plenty to think about Masonically as you're running. So just, put on your headphones and you can re-listen to these series. Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Couple of quick comments and quotes. You said you can always move yourself to a higher level. I think that's definitely a writer downer. That's a good sentence, by the way, writer downer. No human is limited. I think that's a fantastic one to remember. Also, in secret lies and effort. So those are the three big nuggets in my mind that I'm gonna keep moving forward from this event.
Yeah, I think it's important to underscore that limit comment with that we thought it was impossible to do. I mean, we thought the 4-minute mile was impossible, right? Or before someone did it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well, Brother Antonio, thank you, sir, for jumping on with us and being a part of our lodge, being a part of Freemasonry, and being an inspiration to other Masons as well. So we do wish you the best of luck during your proficiency. So thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on here. And next month, we have Worship Brother Dan Kimball, who is going to be giving his presentation and discussion on voices of Freemasonry. And Worship Brother Dan, I'll put you on the spot. Give us a little sneak peek about what this will be about, please.
Every Freemason has a voice. And one of the projects that Ware Lodge of Research has engaged in over the last 3 or 4 years is encouraging Masons to share their attitudes and opinions on certain subjects. And next month, we're going to explore some of those attitudes and opinions.
Good. We look forward to it. I'm sure it'll be an excellent discussion. For those of you that are not aware, the Rubicon Masonic Society is publishing a transactions book, and we can probably provide you with an update to that. Worship Brother Dan, Worship Brother John, do you have any updates for us?
We're still on track for a fall publication, but we don't have a date yet. There's 30-some essays by members of Rubicon and some non-members that'll be published in this, and we'll make that available, of course, on our website and various other websites. So as we get a date that we can announce, we'll provide that.
Great, thank you. Also, the Masonic Table documentary is still doing well, and we're getting good feedback and interest from it. And if anyone has an interest, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. You can get more information at themasonictable.com. Any other final comments from Rubicon, William, Ware, Lexington, or any brothers? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. As usual, we would like to request your support to the Rubicon Masonic Society. We're a nonprofit organization, so anything donated could be tax deductible. Be sure to check with your CPA. You can scan the QR code to go to that page, and we would appreciate any assistance as always. So we thank you to those that have assisted with us. Worship Brother Tom Nitsky.
Brethren, if you'll join me, Grand Architect of the Universe, ruler of heaven and earth, not that we are about to separate and return to our respective places of abode, wilt thou be pleased so to influence our hearts and minds that we may, each one of us, practice those great moral duties which are inculcated in Freemasonry, and with reverence study and obey the laws which thou hast given us. Amen.
So mote it
Mote
be.
it be.
Thank you, brother. Everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. And if you know of anyone that may be interested in these virtual series, feel free to ask them to go to rubiconmasonicsociety.com/RSVP. Our next meeting is Monday, November 28th at 7 p.m., fourth Monday of every month, unless otherwise notified. So hope to see you all then. Our closing slide this evening will be a composition by Mozart, who in 1791 wrote Ave Vernam Corpus. And this motet was originally composed for the Feast of Corpus Christi. So thank you for joining us, brothers. Please enjoy. We'll see you next time.